So as Steve had set up, we work with Visit Williamsburg, and we really specifically, Colonial Williamsburg is a specific attraction within the destination, but the destination is really so much more. We've been working with them for a while, but one of the, you'll see throughout the presentation, my team likes animation, so there's a lot going on some of these slides. But essentially, it was really getting to that. If you live on the East Coast, Williamsburg was a 4th, 5th grade field trip, maybe, check the box, one and done, see butter getting churned, tri-corners hats, and call it a day, and that was pretty much it. There's so much more there that we needed to really bring to the surface and bring out there so that we can encourage repeat visitation and actually bring new audiences into the destination and not have it really just fit in this bucket. So we had the fortune of launching in February 2020, which was a great time to launch a travel brand. But essentially, we came out with the idea of the concept was really life at your pace, right? And it's really being able to showcase all the different things that are available in the destination, and that you can take control of them and experience them in whatever ways you want. And so this is not moving. There we go. So we had a whole campaign built around celebrate at your pace. So essentially built around trying to showcase other aspects of the destination, trying to really give the broader approach to the destination. Again, animation, super fun. But essentially, it was really successful. The campaign was great. We were able to take advantage of keeping our foot on the gas during COVID and during the time period where people weren't traveling. Then we got revenge travel, which was wonderful. So overall, our budget, we had basically a 73-to-1 return on ad spend to be able to get that activity down into the destination. So really exciting, successful campaign over a couple of years. 2023 came, we knew 2023 was going to show a very different travel trend. So the question was, how do we get something bigger and better? And how do we try to make this message come to life a little bit more? So we focused on experiential digital out of home to be able to try something new, try something different, really try to bring the destination to life a little bit more and try to evolve the campaign. So this is just a quick snapshot. So just to talk a little bit about how the engagement works, I'll go through the creative concept and then we'll talk about a handful of different things that we learned, both good and bad, from trying to do this execution. So essentially we really highlighted, basically tapping into somebody's desire to get a break and be able to start an engagement. So we had a QR code on the screen that consumers could engage in, and once you activated the experience through your phone, you could scroll through a variety of different backgrounds that showcase different things. We have everything from golf, craft brewery scenes, amusement parks, live archaeological digs happening at any given point in time that's happening down there. So really trying to show the breadth of the destination, let somebody pick that, have a ticker, basically let somebody put themselves in our background, in the background and in the unit itself. So essentially somebody got to take a picture, drop themselves in, and then essentially, can you see yourself here, was really what we started to use as the evolution of life at your pace. So you could download it, you appeared on the board for a window of time, relatively quick, and then you could download it and send it and share it and be able to share out. So it was something that we really had fun concepting with. And these were built out, so basically they were interactive storefronts with 84-inch LED screens that were built into Washington, Boston, and New York City were our flagship locations for these individuals. And essentially, this is just a couple of handfuls of, you can see people kind of dropping themselves into the units and the different types of backgrounds that we had available. And then actually, I'll talk a little bit about this later, but we had influencers come and film themselves interacting with the board. So we have a very, very active influencer program. Influencers are massive for travel inspiration. And so we deployed some of them to get them engaged with the board, share with their own followings, as well as to provide us content and illustration of how to use the units. So a couple things I want to talk about as part of this in terms of what we learned is one is context. And a lot of these themes we've been talking about over yesterday and today. So I think that they're all really relevant to what we're talking about. Amplification, some of that was the influencers, but we had a couple other things to be able to encourage people to interact and how to get, these units were expensive, right? And so we basically anchored 3 solid ones, but we needed to use that content and get it out into everything else that we did. And then measurement, which we had started doing some measurement work on this. I think obviously measurement's been a hot topic at the conference, so I think that you'll hear a bunch of themes, particularly even from some of the retargeting that you heard from Olipop. So we had a lot of that in here too. So thinking about context, taking a step back in terms of how we chose markets. We have core markets that deliver a tremendous amount of our travel population. They are amazing feeder markets for us. If you're familiar with Philly, this was a location that we did not pick specifically. We chose New York City, Boston, and DC because those 3 markets are our highest value stays. And they come on it early in the year. Boston and New York start ramping up really early for travel for us, but they're long trips. They're 4+ nights, so they're incredibly valuable travelers. Washington, D.C. is a hot market for us all year, so they got the coverage. We really struggled with trying to execute this in Philly, Baltimore, and Cleveland. They're all strong markets for us, but we had to think about how we wanted someone to interact with the units, the right type of context and environment that we wanted those in, and really, again, as I said, they were expensive, so we really concentrated on our highest value markets. We also looked at other immersive experiences to kind of put yourself there. We really liked the transit shelter with the digital boards built into it, but they were a little bit difficult to deploy. We looked at doing in kiosks. We did activate some of this, but not with the interactive experience when we think about mall kiosks and what was out there. And we were looking at Times Square because it's Times Square and it's massive, but it's Times Square and it's massive, and getting someone to stop at those units was going to be really challenging there. So when we think about, and I think this is kind of some of the things that we were talking with Steve about when we were first talking about this case, is we had to kind of look beyond just the pure volume of eyeballs and think about what we wanted somebody to do when they were in front of the board, what type of people we wanted in front of the board. The unit that's in red was actually our second choice, is the American Girl doll store in New York City, which is an amazing location and probably definitely had higher visibility in terms of a pure impressions number. But if anybody has ever been to that area of Rockefeller and American Girl doll store, you're on a mission and you're not stopping. You're there to do the American Girl doll store. You're not stopping and interacting. The yellow was a unit in Boston that, again, was a little bit too close to some of the more touristy landmarks that are in Boston. So a bigger concern is really making sure we got a place that allowed us to kind of get some people who were, residents of those markets and not necessarily tourists from other markets. And also to be able to try to figure out how we could give the greatest experience to somebody, enough space to be able to stand in front of the board and be able to activate. DC, we ended up at outside Capital One Arena. We didn't have a lot of choices in DC. It is a highly regulated market. You can't get really close to some of the historic buildings or security buildings. So with that, we really focused on that specific location, but had to really think carefully about, do we want to do it right before a game? Do we want to do it, at another time when people might be more inclined to stop and engage and not be kind of rushing in? So a lot of thought had to go into thinking about, and things that we didn't just go for the numbers, it was really kind of thinking about that location. We also had to put in a lot of amplification. The technology's there and somebody can engage, but we found that people needed to really be shown how to engage with it. And so we had a handful of days where we had brand ambassadors that worked the boards. that were essentially standing there in the street and encouraging people to interact and showing them what to do with it. We also put our own teams out there on the boards. We all worked boards. It was really great because as a buyer, you don't often get to see your work in context, and you don't often get to see somebody engaging with your work, which is great. So shout out to our very own media director who worked one of the boards. You can see we had all little hats and tags that we were working it. I worked a New York City board in a very, very cold, dreary day in the city. But we had people from our own teams, so brand teams, creative teams, media teams. Was a little bit unusual, but we all had such a good time because you just don't get to do that often. And in terms of the influencer activation, we have a very large influencer program. They power our blog, they power a lot of activity that really drives to the destination, and they help us diversify the audience a bit. So we, as I mentioned before, we had influencers that came to the different markets, interacted with the boards. The influencers chosen were ones that had followings in those markets already, were able to share and engage. So even if people weren't in their followers, even if people weren't getting to the boards, they were seeing the boards in action and at least getting the point and the message. So a lot of times when we think about experiential, and when we've done experiential in the past, it's the experience, but then it's the where else does it go? And social and other channels give us the opportunity to really blow that out and showcase what the boards could do. We had the 3 big flagship units, but we had a very large program that spread throughout because we really needed to make sure it was everywhere. So we did a lot of activation in other markets, a lot of kind of traditional out-of-home, and a lot of interactive out-of-home in units, digital out-of-home specifically, not necessarily showcasing the interactivity of the units, but more so making sure that we were using both an experience plus an extension to be able to make sure we got our message wherever we needed to be. You saw a little bit about retargeting. We did launch retargeting that really focused on all out-of-home exposure. We found that the retargeting pool that was built based on the board's out-of-home exposure had engagement that was about 60% higher than some of our other retargeting, and actually most of our other retargeting. So we really looked at that as an engagement tactic between the 2 channels to be able to do that. And obviously as the technology continues to expand, we definitely want to be doing more of this because we're all, in our business, we're all trying for sequential touches and trying to understand that it's a whole user journey. So this at least was able to get us started on that. And then from a measurement standpoint, obviously we had some of the retargeting activity. We also monitored, upon launch, we monitored site visitation. So we saw, once we put out-of-home in flight in 2023, with this campaign, we saw a 35% uptick in site visitation from the out-of-home markets in particular. It's not, unfortunately, an isolated. We were blanketing these markets with other things, but the out-of-home experience and digital out-of-home was by far one of our larger spends in the market and one of our broadest approaches in the market. So we're able to get some of that activity in there and be able to see those upticks to kind of validate what that raining down on that market did for us. We also worked, I know we just heard about it a little bit in the previous presentation, we worked on a geofence rate. So we're a DMO. We do not control our booking engine. We have tools and attribution tools that allow us to see bookings in the area, but each hotel and property really controls their own booking, and our primary goal is overnight visitation. Overnight stays are our bread and butter. And so we look at a couple tools that let us look at visitation and lagging visitation. It takes 6 months for somebody to appear in our destination, so that was really a long tracking window. But we did work to set up essentially overlap rates of if you were exposed to the units in these markets, you walked by these units, and then you later appeared in the destination within the 6 to 9 month window after. We saw that we had a much higher rate on the experiential markets, the units the markets that carried experiential, as well as all the other 3 out-of-home markets that got a lot of the support. So previous campaign didn't have the experiential in it. We saw our lift from 2.1% to 4.5 appeared in the destination. When we did the digital out-of-home and the digital experience, we saw that rate in terms of visitation go up to 10.4% for people exposed to the boards. So again, and really it's kind of an evolving science and evolving technology that we were thrilled to be able to start. And to kind of add that measurement to, we have to use a myriad of different ways to measure our campaigns. But overall, when we take a big step back from the campaigns in general, we've seen a lot of success in here, and so we've seen almost a 40% increase in ad-influenced trips to the destination. Being able to get more people to come in, more people to experience more things, and if you're in the hotel business, your average daily rate is kind of king to you. So we saw a significant increase. We've seen a significant increase since we started the campaign. So I went through that relatively quickly. Anybody has any questions? I do talk fast. I'm also happy to say, too, this plan was a Gold Award Media Plan of the Year in 2023. So we were really excited to be able to do that with the OAA. So really excited.
Well, let me ask you to extend this a little bit, because we already spoke about maybe coming down to Austin and reporting on how you're iterating off of this and shifting gears. What are the plans off of this? You're not going to do the same thing again, but you're still going to make a considerable use of the channel.
Yes.
What's the shift in strategy? Why? And what are the learnings from this one that you're going to be projecting onwards? Yeah. Because you and Jen might come down in Austin and tell us how it all worked out.
So we are expanding. We did back away a little bit from the experiential. We love the experiential. It definitely did quite a bit for us. They are very expensive to build. And one of the challenges and one of the reasons why we're kind of stepping back from that specific execution, one of the things I didn't talk about in here, our prime feeder time is January and February from Boston and New York. Very cold times of year. We see a huge spike in planning. So that's our planning window. That was not the best window to stand out in the street and get somebody to interact with a unit. So we kind of pulled back a little bit from that. We're still blanketing heavy in these markets. What we're trying to do with the digital out-of-home this year is just go into more formats and more spaces and have it be a lot more active and a lot more spread throughout the market, and kind of looking at how that experience comes to life, how the creative comes to life, and how we can look at more at the measurement part of it. I think we're really leaning a little bit more into the measurement of it and being able to quantify it. So more units, more types of units, but tapping into more of the resources that people in this room have in terms of that sequential messaging and trying to kind of really validate the value of the channel. I mean, that's really the biggest part.
Questions?
Is it about my outfit? We were having a conversation about what we're wearing, so I said, you can ask me a question about my jacket. So.
Hello.
Hi.
I know you rode the horse Curtis yesterday. Is that who it was?
This was intimidating, and then I got on a horse for the first time yesterday, so not so intimidating.
We had a lovely horse ride together. This is an awesome case study, really cool campaign. Love that you were, on the street showing people how to use it. Sometimes that's the scary bit, right? Like, are people actually going to use this expensive thing that we invested in? But I'm also really interested in the measurement side. So you talked about waiting 6 months to do the overlap foot traffic study. I'm just curious, what vendor you used for your analytics studies?
It was the vendor that had set up the geofence was Quorum. Okay. That had built that campaign. It wasn't necessarily wait. We have to give it that amount of time. We start measuring right away because we do find that, for example, we know that Boston, it takes them months to get there. New York, they'll come down pretty quickly because it's kind of what we consider a borderline flight drive market for us, whereas Boston's exclusively flights. And it was actually an offshoot in the travel industry. There's a vendor called Arrivalist, and they do visitation. So it was really kind of modeled after the polygons that they set in the destination for us. So Quorum really drove that portion of it to be able to do that. But yeah, visitation's huge for us. What we'd like to do is to try to figure out how we expand it to not just visitation, but spend in destination, which is, also, again, another thing that, rising boat lifts all tides. In a destination, we can get people spending more, so.
You're sort of in an ironic position with these highly interactive keystone pieces. Typically, with out-of-home, you want a lot of traffic, but in some sense, a lot of traffic hinders you because people can't stop and do what you want them to do. Yeah. So how are you figuring that piece, that you want traffic but not too much traffic to actually get in the way of the experience?
Yeah, it was a huge, I mentioned that American Girl doll store piece and the one in Boston, which actually, again, had more traffic. It was literally like a month of discussion to figure out exactly what the right units are. It's hard to balance. I will be honest, it's hard to balance. We did find we need more ambassadors on site to encourage usage of the units. We definitely did. We had a handful of days that we had ambassadors there. And a handful of days that our own teams were there, but we still find that people are not necessarily like walking up to doing that. I don't think we have a clear-cut answer in terms of how we're balancing it. We really look at each unit individually for an activation like this to be able to gauge. I know for New York, it was 237 Park, which is right around the corner from Grand Central, but not too close to Grand Central that people would just be pushing us over as they're running for their trains. There was a factor of that. It was trying to make sure that that location had enough traffic all day of people who were dwelling. So that specific location we chose happened to be across the street from a handful of different types of sandwich places. There was a lot of loitering there during the day. And so that's kind of what won it out for us, is that it wasn't just people rushing to Grand Central, but also an area that there was just a lot of office workers that were hanging out there in that time. So really cherry picking each one.
Go on over here.
Excellent job of the omni-channel approach. I love nothing more whenever brands utilize and not silo.
Yeah.
So great job on that. There's a reason why you won the gold award there. Question, as you kind of evolve, the people that visit Williamsburg, I would imagine the audience segmentation varies tremendously. What is your thoughts on how to utilize digital out of home to hit those different audiences creatively at different points in the day?
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about that this morning. So we specifically chose, we use these units to showcase different pieces, but we're getting smarter and learning a little bit more about our different target audiences and what motivates them. And so we're excited to be able to kind of move into more of, I guess if I take a step back, we could show 12 pictures of the destination to the same person and see what resonates. And we kind of did that a little bit to try to see what resonates. But now that we know what does, now that we know of what a family is looking for, roller coasters and things like that, water parks, and what, we have an audience called Active Matures, which for those of us who are 50 and up is a little tough to hear, but that it's empty nesters who can travel in our shoulder seasons. They're a huge market for us. They like other things. And so we're really excited, and we haven't done enough of it, and we're really trying to get branching into it, is using more of the audience targeting that's available in this space now to be able to isolate neighborhoods and to be able to isolate audiences and serve them specifically, and be able to kind of bring some of the audience targeting and creative rotations that we have in other places into this channel. This was specifically, let's show somebody everything. And we did that for a little bit of time, as really, creatively in digital as well, just kind of showed everybody we were trying to establish the breadth, and now I think that we've established the breadth for 3 or 4 years. We're ready to go a little bit deeper into the segmentation.
Michelle, what role did social influencers play here, and how do you interact with them? How do you incentivize them? How do you frame it for them? How do you find them? Because I think for a lot of especially the highly interactive and creative and 3D and very showy digital out-of-home pieces, social activation is such an important piece of it. It's almost kind of built into it. So I'd like to know how you did that piece.
So we are very lucky. We have an internal team that works exclusively with influencers. Actually, they're a social content team that's a heavy way on influencers. So they have an entire year's worth of basically bank of different types of micro to macro influencers that they work with. And we're able to isolate so the ones that we had chosen specifically for the interactions were ones that, taking a step back, the influencers all serve a different purpose, right? And it's trying to, we have LGBTQ influencers. We have different types of influencers to be able to expand the perception of the destination. The ones that were chosen specifically for these units were ones that had strong followings in that local market and had a really good presence in that local market. They went to the units prior to their trip to the destination to start the interaction, started to feed that to their followers, and then they were then producing content when they were in the destination. Because it's really, we have to get all of them down there. That's really the influencer strategy, is getting them down there, having them use their unique lens of our destination. We curate trips for them, but it's their input of what they think is going to be really exciting down there. And then, you know, the incentivizing is different depending on the type of influencer. Some of it is just the trip, and some of it is a different type of incentive. So, but a lot of these were ones that were going to the destination anyways, so we got them started by using the board.
Michelle, you may have sold a couple of trips while you were here.
Hopefully.
Thanks.
Hopefully. We have a
Thank-
lot of good craft breweries, I'm telling you.
There you go. Even better.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.